It was a few weeks ago that Harold Leininger told Penny about a sermon he'd heard that had profoundly inspired him. And that sermon was called Hold On to the Rope. And that imagery so spoke to me that I used it on which to base today's sermon. So thank you, Harold. It's not often that you can hear a sermon secondhand and be so inspired. So I can imagine what it must have been the first time around. So imagine with me that we are in Damascus. Paul, by this time, is a convert to the faith, and he has been speaking so powerfully and so persuasively about Jesus being the Son of God that he has become a wanted man. Formerly a zealous persecutor of Christians, now the hunter has become the hunted, and his very life is at stake. Guards are posted at each gate, and they are standing in wait. Now it's the dark of night, and he's planned an escape. The disciples have found an opening in the city wall and are going to let him down on the other side by lowering him in a basket. Paul's life was saved that night because his friends were willing to hold on to the rope. My question is, when has someone held a rope for you? I'd venture to wager that each of us here this morning can think of several such instances. I'm reminded of the times I might see you as a surgery patient in the hospital. Once you've been given anesthesia and are put under, you have no control, no power, and you are totally at the mercy of the people holding the rope. You are in the basket, so to speak, and the doctors have your life in their hands. And all you can do is to trust and pray. Don't let go of the rope. Please just don't let go of the rope. But this morning, I'm going to turn our thoughts away from ourselves and onto the church. Because the church today is in a basket, and I think it's fair to say that it is at the mercy of the people who are willing to hold the rope. You've heard the statistics. One source I read last week said that a mere 10% of today's churches are alive and vital. Do you believe that? By the time I retire, I will have pastored 7 churches. Right now, 3 of them are in very critical condition, with one of those 3 singing from CDs because they cannot afford an accompanist anymore. And my other 3 churches are dead. So of those 7 churches, the church on the Cape is the one church that is alive and vital and even thriving. I can't express how painful it is to have one of your churches, one of your beloved churches, no longer alive. Those churches that had raised saints and, yes, a few sinners along the way, but for the most part, marvelous saints. For those churches that had been life-giving oases for so many, a positive force for the community, a beacon of light for the faithful, and now they're gone forever. My first church is a condo for the first couple I ever married. But somehow, just as parents are not meant to outlive their children, churches are meant to outlive their pastors. And when that doesn't happen, it's extremely painful. But if misery loves company, the church is not the only institution that's hurting. Ask anyone in Eastern Star or Rainbow or the Masons or Scouts or Campfire Girls. Remember them? Or Rotary. Where are the members? In the mid-'80s, membership in the Kennebunk Rotary Club was at 110. Since that time, Kennebunk has appreciably grown in population, and also women have been added to the roster. But today, membership has dwindled to a mere 60. Likewise, the chief reports that volunteer fire departments are also hurting for members. Presently, 50% of the Goose Rocks Fire Department are over the age of 50. 50 doesn't sound very old to most of us, but when you consider what is being asked of firefighters, physically, 50 is up there. A couple of the men are in their 70s, one is in his 90s. And admittedly, the chief said, we are having a hard time getting young members. So my question this morning is, why is that? What is the reason for why our institutions are flailing? Not long ago, I attended certainly one of the saddest funerals I've attended. It was the funeral of the Byfield United Methodist Church in Massachusetts. That was a church that David Kerr had significantly grown and loved. And several months after that funeral service was over, Dave asked a key leader of the congregation to send him an autopsy report, accounting for why he thought such a one-time bastion of service, local and international, had not survived. One of the primary reasons he gave was this: no one coming into the church was willing to make its work a major part of his or her life, a priority, if you will. And then he added, people don't want to commit these days. They want to be entertained. Studies would seem to bear him out on this. Church attendance across the nation has dwindled, not because of diminished faith, but because congregants do not choose to sacrifice the time involved. Maybe that's because Rotary's motto, service above self, is gradually being replaced by the Burger King slogan, have it your way. I mentioned last June that one of my favorite things about that time of year is listening to nationwide commencement addresses. Some people like watching the World Series. I like listening to sermons. What can I say? But were I to summarize this year's messages, I'd have to say that for the most part, they pretty much all fell into the same camp. Follow your passion, chart your own course, be true to yourself. But there was one notable exception. The one I'm referring to was an address delivered by columnist David Brooks at Dartmouth. He talked about the fact that as a society, we no longer tout the value of self-sacrifice or of commitment, for that matter. In contrast, we stress the importance of flexibility. Today's culture is about keeping your options open. But then he added, and I love this part, he said, class of 2015, I am going to give you the ultimate spoiler alert about your future. And then he said, your happiness in life will come from the commitments you make to your family, to your community, to your faith, to something greater than yourself. And spoken like a true Mainer, even though he was born in Toronto, Canada, Brooks whacked eloquent when he preached, bottom line, when you make a commitment to something you believe in, it doesn't feel like you are putting on an uncomfortable lobster shell. It feels as if you are taking off the shell and are becoming the shape you were meant to be. And that's what the very act of committing is meant to do. It's meant to be life-giving, as it was for Paul when he unreservedly gave his life to Christ. He learned through Jesus to live by an inverse logic, and that is that you give to receive, you surrender so as to gain strength, you lose yourself so as to find yourself. And yes, it is a costly way to exist, but the price of no commitment means death. It means death to the family, death to marriage, and death to the church. I saw that truth played out as the nursery coordinator of one of my churches. It was my job to staff the nursery each week. And this is how my phone calls went. When asking the mothers, I'd hear, I go to get a break from my own kids. I'm not going to go to church to take care of other people's kids. And then I'd call the older women in the congregation and I'd hear, no way, I have paid my dues and now I'm taking care of the grandkids during the week. I'm not taking care of any kids on Sunday. The mothers are the ones you should call. The price of no commitment is death. If the church has managed to withstand centuries of persecution, then we as a body of believers in this generation are called to withstand the potentially lethal foes of apathy and indifference. We have to, in order to keep the church alive. God, in giving us the church on the Cape, has entrusted us with what I like to say, and some of you as well, a mini megachurch. And I like to say, and I do believe, that it is the way church is meant to be. It's a place where the Holy Spirit whirls around here every single Sunday. It's a place where when the service ends, your service begins. It's a place where the Spirit of Jesus Christ can move freely because he's got feet that will run. He's got feet that will carry him where he wants to go. He's got hands that will gladly serve him. And he's got hearts that will eagerly love for him. It all happens right here every single week. Every single week. But we know that we can't be complacent about that fact. Nor can we lose hope due to the climate around us, because hope ultimately is self-generated. To give up hope would mean that we'd given up our willingness to keep producing it. And we produce hope in accordance with the strength of our own faith commitment. We produce hope in accordance with the strength of our faith in Jesus Christ. And so the message of this morning is hold on. Hold on tightly to the rope. But the best is still waiting to be. In the words of Ken Miedema, we are on our way to greater things, bound to walk a higher road. We are bound for greater things. This is the word of the Lord.